Hello and welcome to Bitesize Edge with me, Jules Montague. And today we are going to be, I have the pleasure of chatting with Louise Miller. Now, Louise is a productivity mentor. That's quite an exciting title, I think, who guides busy, successful business owners along a calm path to a more organised life. And I can absolutely say that Louise has helped me in this calm path to a more organised life. And we're going to be hearing more about that in a moment. But let me tell you a little bit more about Louise. Louise believes productivity shouldn't be about cramming more in, but about creating space to do more of what makes you happy in your business and your life, whether helping clients tame their to-do lists, which is exactly what Louise has helped me do, manage their time, plan what needs to happen in their business, or overcome their personal productivity blocks. Louise ensures they find flow when it comes to getting stuff done. Good morning, Louise.
Hi, Jules. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for chatting to me this morning. So this is all very intriguing, and obviously I've worked with you a little bit before Christmas around the taming your to-do list, which we'll come on to in a little while. But would you mind, Louise, just telling us a little bit about how you became a productivity mentor?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a bit of a journey. And what I've kind of discovered along the way is that there are loads of really creative people out there with brilliant ideas who absolutely love what they do, but they actually struggle to kind of land those things in reality. And what I've kind of discovered over time is that the sort of marriage between their sort of brilliant ideas and my kind of logical, organised brain, that sort of marriage works really beautifully. But it took me a while to get to this point. So a little bit about my background then. Yeah, I sort of spent 15 years working in various admin roles, in various different sort of office-based kind of jobs, really. Sort of, I started out in financial services, which is completely the opposite of what I thought I'd be doing. And I've worked in lots of different environments like that, and kind of found myself getting invited to take on more responsibility because I was very good at what I did. Found myself getting promoted, and then invariably the stress and anxiety would kick in and I would run away.
Okay.
So I had this kind of pattern of doing a really good job, being promoted, finding it really stressful because that promotion usually involved managing people.
Okay.
And that is not in flow for me. So I would usually kind of end up quitting and running away. And I went through this loop several times until it got particularly bad. I was in my last job managing a team of 5 people in a really kind of fast changing environment, and it just wasn't the right fit for me at all. And the stress and anxiety just got unbearable. And at that point, things started to shift for me. And this was about 4 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just remember really clearly having this epiphany one day where I just thought, Louise, why are you always rushing about? Because I was just running from one thing to the next constantly, as if I was waiting and expecting someone to tell me it was okay to stop.
Yeah.
And to say, you've done everything now, you can rest. That doesn't ever actually happen though, does it? So I had this kind of light bulb moment about 4 years ago, almost to the day actually, 4 years ago, and then started exploring a different way of being and a different way of doing things. And I discovered this whole world of slow living and sort of a simpler way of being. And then I kind of had this existential crisis of thinking, okay, productivity is not the be all and end all. And I really firmly believe that. And I really firmly believe that productivity has got nothing to do with our self-worth as humans. And that is such a strong belief of mine. But on the other hand, I know where my skills are. And my skills and gifts lie in helping people be productive and in being efficient and all of that stuff. So I was kind of considering these two different worlds, really. My gifts and skills around productivity versus my belief that productivity isn't the be all and end all. And I had a bit of a battle with myself. And then I had another little light bulb moment, which, comes back to what you said at the beginning about the belief I really strongly hold, another one that I really hold, which is that the belief that productivity isn't about more.
Yeah.
And it's not about doing more in less time.
That's such a mindset, though, isn't it? That and I'm going to make a massive generalization, but we've almost been, it's an embedded thought process that we have, that productivity does mean that we just cram as much as we possibly can in. And as long as we get through that really full to-do list and get everything done, and as you've just said, rushing around constantly, then we'll be able just to stop for a moment. But again,
Yeah.
that never happens.
No, absolutely. We have to make a conscious choice, that we are going to allow ourselves to stop and rest, because otherwise you'll spend your whole life in that state of rushing about, which is what I felt I was doing for that 15 years where I was working before. So, yeah, and it sounds so obvious when you kind of land on this realization, but like you say, it's such a different kind of way of thinking to what we've been brought up with. And, talking about to-do lists as well in particular, a lot of us were raised to believe that we were only allowed to rest, relax, do something fun once we'd done all the things.
Everything's done, yes.
So you've got to do your homework first, before you're allowed to enjoy yourself. And it's so ingrained that a lot of us carry that with us.
Just saying that, Louise, I've had that moment of going, gosh, that was me yesterday, of desperately trying to get my daughter to get her homework done. And the negotiation and the bribing of, once you've done this, all of your homework done, because you want to be ahead of the game for Monday, then you can do this.
Yeah, it's so ingrained.
Yeah, it's not a good habit to create, though, is it?
No, and I think there are times when that probably is, a necessary way of going about things, but it's redressing the balance as well whenever we can.
Yeah.
I had a client actually who, she had a brilliant thing, which her daughters were doing the GCSEs, and I think she kind of flipped it. They were saying they needed to study more and they needed to revise more, and she basically took them out for the day.
Wow.
And said, no,
have a break.
And I thought, how powerful is that?
Yeah. But it's so against everything we're taught. But I love the idea of that. And you mentioned there, Louise, slow living. Does that in essence what you're saying with regards to just taking that time to rest and consciously making those choices?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what I didn't know 4 years ago, whilst I was stressed out and felt like a wrung out old dish rag, was that there is this whole kind of slow living movement out there, which I won't go into in a lot of detail, but there is a whole group of people that are all about, doing less.
Yeah.
That is okay.
Yeah.
Which is so countercultural, and it felt like a window into a brave new world, and it's an amazing thing when I first discovered it. But yeah, marrying that to what I do, it's about intention for me, and it's about knowing that you're making a conscious choice.
Yeah.
And that conscious choice might be, today I just need to get as much done as I can today.
Yeah.
But balancing that out with why, knowing why you're doing that, and that you've made the choice to do that, so you're not resenting it. And for me, the why is usually around something related to your vision.
Yes.
Something related to what you're actually wanting to experience in the bigger picture of life.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does completely. This working with intention is so important. So
yes.
And it also allows us, I'm guessing, I don't know, to feel a sense of control, but a positive control, as in we get to choose, because we all have choice.
Yes.
But whether we're consciously making the choice for us, or often what tends to happen is we're making those choices for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clearer you are around what's important for you, the easier it is to kind of have those boundaries in place. And know that, like you say, you're making a choice, because when we're feeling like we're not in control and we don't have that choice, that's when resentment starts to kick in, I find.
Yes.
And things don't feel like fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We forget that, don't we? That the things that we do outside of our kind of personal world can be fun.
Yes.
Can be fun. It's a bit of a moment of people going, what? Fun, but it can be fun. It's finding that. And I'm guessing, Louise, going back to your journey and your story, that 4 years ago, sometimes it takes that, doesn't it? That moment of almost feeling quite, one of my favourite words, discombobulated, fact of going, right, something has to give, that light bulb moment. And it's often off the back of not necessarily a good feeling or something that's happened where we go, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's not making me happy, and I'm not well doing it.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, because the choice for me to actually sort of step back in the way that I did in the end was actually out of my hands, and my doctor told me.
Yeah. Well,
you know, I was trying to decide, do I go to work, do I not go to work? And she just said, I need to make that decision for you. You're not going to work.
Yes. Yeah. So it comes down to wellness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I was, faced with a choice. I can either medicate myself in order to cope with what was going on at work, or do things differently. And for me, it was a no-brainer. Yeah.
Wow. So that was the kind of pivotal moment of thinking something has to give.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now, fast forward 4 years, and your title of productivity mentor. Tell us a little bit about the people that you're working with and what type of things you do with them.
Yeah, so it's a real kind of variety, actually. So I work with business owners. Usually it's just them in their business. They might have a VA, but usually it's just them. And what I'm finding is that, like I said, they've got really good ideas of things that they want to do, but they've been trying quite often to do it all themselves.
Yes.
And then yes, indeed. And then they reach a point where they realize actually they can't do it themselves, partly because we're not all great at everything that needs to happen when we're running a business. And I bring the kind of sort of logic, organization, practical, pragmatic kind of brain to things, whereas they've got the more creative ideas. So I kind of help people. I had a client I spent a day with where she'd got all of these amazing offers of things that she wanted to do in her business, of different courses and retreats she wanted to run and all of these brilliant things, but she was struggling to see how they all fitted together. And she kind of wanted to create a 12-month cyclical business model.
Yeah.
So we sat down for a year, not a year, that would have been ridiculous. We sat down for a day.
You said that's a long time.
I know, yeah. No, we sat down for a day and just figured out what that all looked like. And I was able just to ask the right questions to fit it all together. I've got another client where I meet with her 3 times a year, and we just sort of plan out what her priorities are going to be and the action steps that she needs to take to get her to the place she wants to be in her business. I have a mentoring sort of program that I do with people one-to-one, where people get stuck in these patterns where they're not managing their time very well. They're procrastinating, they're constantly feeling overwhelmed and exhausted and frazzled. And sometimes they just need someone from the outside to step in and start, just exploring their habits a lot of the time.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. We've talked at length about that.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes just having that almost that disassociated eyes on what's going on, because when you're in it, it's so hard to move through it, move past it, because you're so caught in the emotion of it, or the anxiety of it, or the overwhelm of it. That's a word that I really resonates with me, this feeling of overwhelm. Or it did, Louise, until I was part of your new fabulous program called Tame Your To-Do List, which I have to say, honestly, has made such a huge difference. And it feels so doable. When I first spoke to you about it and first joined it, I was a little bit nervous about that whole thing of finding time to do it, ironically. And it was so step by step and so clear and so bite-sized pieces and so manageable that it all just worked. And I found myself in this place of having, as you've talked about, those light bulb moments of going, oh my gosh, how did I not know this? Or I knew this, but what I needed was a Louise to come along and go, right, these are the things you need to do step by step. So do you want to just, instead of me trying, probably quite bad, to describe your fabulous online workshop. Do you want to just give a heads up of how Tame Your To-Do List works?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. I've been sitting here with a massive grin on my face hearing you say all of that, Jules. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased it's helped you.
Really worked for me, which is wonderful.
Fantastic. Yeah, so this is a course that I've been feeling the need for a while, and I've only recently created it. And it, in my experience, quite a lot of the overwhelm that people feel when they think about their to-do list in particular, it's not always about what's actually on the list. Quite often it's about not really knowing what's on the list because everything's spread all over the place. And it's really hard to see actually what's going on. And that quite often is the source of the overwhelm, not the actual activities that need to happen. So Tame Your To-Do List is basically it's a 3-week course. And the idea behind it is that it gives you a system to gather all of that stuff in. So you've got everything all together in one place and you can see really, really clearly what you've got going on. And then it also goes sort of further than that as well, in giving you a system and a way to manage those to-dos so that you're not mindlessly writing them just on this list that forever keeps getting longer, but you're thinking really clearly about, when stuff's going to happen and putting it into a system that supports you and actually reminding you of what needs to be happening when it needs to happen. So again, it's taking some of that pressure away from your brain, so you're not having to do all of that in your head and relying on yourself remembering things at the right time. The system that I teach in the course does all of that for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I think one of the key things for me was exactly that. It was about going, okay, so where are all my to-do lists? They're here, they're here, they're here, they're here, they're here. Bringing it all into one place. Just even that in itself was such a massive kind of moment, going, right, it's all in one place. Now I've got it here. I can now do something with this. Loved the way it's set out, and it is so manageable. And it's weird because very quickly have I got into the habit now of every evening before I go to bed of sitting down and going, right, okay, here's my to-dos for tomorrow, and looking back at what I've got for January and looking back at all of that. And it's it really has made me way more productive. And I know that we've had the Christmas period, and I know, it's been lovely because there's been no work. So there's been very little on those to-do lists because it's been a bit more kind of ebb and flow. But it's really helped me from the beginning of January going, right, okay. And I almost was looking forward to sitting down and being able to write that list because it was all in one place. And I knew where I was going to write it, with my pencil, with my pink book that comes everywhere with me. And it's really empowering. I think that's the word I would use for it. It's just given me such a sense of balance and stillness, if that's the right word. So I thank you wholeheartedly for that. And Louise, is there, first of all, are there some tips, that kind of top tips for people who are looking to get a little bit more organized? And also, where can people find out more information about you and what you do?
Okay, great. Yeah. So thank you again for saying such kind things. I love that you use the word empowered. And I think focus is the really key thing. Like you said, looking back at January, it helps you to stay really focused on your intentions. So bringing things back to living intentionally. I just wanted to get that in there quickly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so some tips for your fabulous listeners. So we've kind of already touched on the first one, which is the sense that having stuff everywhere leads to overwhelm. So my first kind of tip is to, try and gather together. First of all, write a list of all of the places that you would need to look if you wanted to try and get a sense of what's going on in your life, and gather all of that in. And just do what you can to consolidate everything into one place. And you will find it can feel a bit scary at first because suddenly you're seeing it all laid out in front of you.
Yeah.
But from there, you can start to make informed choices, coming back to that sense of control and choice again.
Absolutely.
So that's my first tip, is gather everything together. The next thing, I would like to give people permission to take things off their to-do lists.
Hurrah!
Hooray! It's it's so easy to keep adding things to the list constantly, but it is perfectly okay to take things off your list. In fact, it's to be encouraged. Sometimes things that were important 2 months ago are no longer important. And if you just keep looking at them on your list, just sitting there, that's going to make you feel pretty crappy. So sometimes you just need to go, actually, do you know what? This isn't a priority anymore, and be okay to let that go.
Yeah.
And the third tip is a kind of practical one when it comes to sitting down to think about what you're going to do in any given day. Make sure you've got your calendar in front of you and consider your energy levels. Mm-hmm. And again, those things feel quite obvious when you say them, but you'd be surprised at how many people just scribble down a list of everything that pops into their head when it comes to what they want to do in the day, rather than thinking about, okay, what have I already committed to? How much of my energy does that stuff need? And what space do I have around it?
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Where is your energy? And that's a really key one. I know for me, when I thought about that, I was thinking, God, it's not something I even consider. It's grabbing 5 minutes initially, you know, to excuse me, to write down this to-do list, but actually taking that time out and going, right, I give myself permission to go and sit quietly and really, really reflect on this. It's time saving in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're wonderful tips. Thank you, Louise, for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And how do people get hold of you?
Yes, so my website is the best place to go, and that's BettyLouOnline.com.
BettyLouOnline.com. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're interested in Tame to-do list in the course that we've been talking about today, if you go to work with me, you'll see it listed there, and you can have a little look at all of the details there. And another option to you from my website as well is I've got a quiz on there that helps people to discover their biggest productivity block. So if people love a quiz, everybody loves a quiz.
Everybody loves a quiz.
If you fill that in, it will identify your biggest productivity block, and then I will send you a tailored Get Stuff Done guide, which has got loads of tools, tips and advice that can help you to move through that block. So that's quite a good starting point as well if you're interested in that.
Wonderful. So that's BettyLouOnline.com.
Yeah.
And there's a quiz on there, but also under Work With Me, you'll see the Tame Your To-Do List course set out there with a bit more information. Yeah. Louise, thank you so much for talking to me today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
Cannot recommend the Tame Your To-Do List more highly. It has really been such a big shift for me, which I never thought was going to be possible. As such a busy human being, as we all are, but just having that time to really use and learn new tools and techniques was fabulous. So I thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've loved our chat today. So thank you, Jules.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, Louise. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.